Let's get into Scripture today. Um, when we left last week, we finished all of chapter 22, and then the first little section there of 23. As you're in Acts now, as we're going through the book, uh, as we're nearing the end of the book here, you get into this very long narrative that just continues on. Um, as Paul is going from one place to the other. And it's important to kind of catch the dates, how long he's been in this place, who these people are. And sometimes when you're going through what you might call just historical narrative, it makes it a little hard to find the meaning this is being written for. There's a couple of things just off the bat that stand out to me. Number one is that as you're seeing what's going on here, if you or I were writing a story about something and we wanted it just to be pristinely pushing the good narrative that we like about this person or that person or the story or a movement or whatever, if you ever go back and has anybody ever looked at the history of North Korea and what they say, like that the great grandfather, I believe, or the grandfather, rode a unicorn, and that he never did anything wrong, like his entire life, and if you go back into all of these different cults or leaders, and you hear like, hey, this guy was born with a full head of hair and was talking by the time he was 6 months old, and all these different things. There's this tendency that happens that as you write something that is just coming out of your own imagination to glorify this person or that movement, you have this tendency of making it squeaky clean, and there's tension that's built up, and then there's a resolution that comes in that fixes it, right? As you read through this narrative, it's not really what you see. You see more of reality, more of how life typically actually works, which gives us this understanding that in our own lives, we're not looking for an ideal of how this thing should work out and how we expect it. And if we just follow God and trust God and do everything, then our life will be easygoing. Like Ernie said, God didn't promise us a rose garden. But in all of these things, as you're reading through it, you see that oftentimes the way that I think Paul would have had it work out was not the way that it worked out. It was difficult. It was hard. He's writing a lot of this from prison. I've never been to prison. I went to jail one time, but that was a field trip. They didn't try to keep me. And I thought that one visit was enough for me to be like, I don't ever want to go anywhere near this again. This just seems bad. Paul is writing this from probably one of the worst things that most of us could imagine being in, which is prison. And prison in a ancient culture where it's a little different than it is now. So as you read this, kind of catch that understanding that every part of this narrative, when you're building up in this tension and you're seeing how this is working, and then all of a sudden it doesn't work out the way that you thought it would. It kind of comes to this resolution, but not the resolution that you would like. That's a point that's leading you to an understanding that this is, it's written from a point of view of truth. It's not written from fantasy or out of somebody's imagination. It's real. So as you read that, there's those things. There's also this, I think what could be maybe even the larger point is this faithfulness understanding that God did not promise us an easy life. He did not promise us things to work out the exact way that we wanted them to. If you have lived any portion of life yet, you realize that. You understand that from a very, very, sometimes a startling point of view. When you deal with something that comes out of nowhere, you deal with things where you're thinking, man, if it just would work out this way and it goes the other way. That's a pretty important thing for us to learn. As you're watching Paul deal with that, he's dealing with it in submission and faithfulness. We have this tendency to put people like that up on a pedestal and be like, he just hovered through prison. Oh, the day is beautiful. I'm in prison, but it doesn't matter. I don't think that that's how anybody actually is. I think he had surrendered himself and submitted himself, but I don't think he liked everything that was going on. It's okay to be upset with the way things work out in your life sometimes. It's okay to look at the difficult circumstances of your life, of loss, of difficulties financially, of just things going in the country even, the way that you don't care for them. It's okay to look at those things and be upset, to not like it. What it does is it reminds us that this is not the permanent thing. This isn't it. This is a foretaste. The beauty that you see on days that we've had this week where it was cool and sunny and just nice to be outside, it's like a foretaste of what heaven, of what eternity will be like. And these difficulties that come, loss, separation, hurt, it's also a foretaste. It reminds us that this is a thing that is temporary. It's now. But there's coming a time when that will no longer be there. It's gone. I don't know about you, but I can't quite fathom or comprehend that, that thing of zero anxiety. And I'm not really an anxious person, but to have zero anxiety about anything, that would be very, very strange. To not have to worry about losing people through death or separation or anything, that it just is no longer there. That idea of peace in a way that we can't even quite understand it now. I think part of our journey towards sanctification is learning how to walk more in that peace each day. That when we have those opportunities to trust in ourselves or to trust in God, that we choose to trust in Him. And the more that we choose to trust in Him, the more that we are like Him. And the more that it demonstrates through our life and our choices and our actions and our demeanor that we are His. And that our hope is not in this place. Our hope is in something else. So as we read this, let's keep that in mind. There's going to be a lot of verses here. We're going to move rather quickly just because time. So in Acts chapter 23, starting in verse 12, we'll go here to 15, and then we'll kind of break it down, and we'll break it down by paragraph here. It says, "When it was day, the Jews made a plot and bound themselves by an oath neither to eat nor drink till they had killed Paul. There were more than 40 who made this conspiracy. They went to the chief priests and elders and said, 'We have strictly bound ourselves by an oath to taste no food till we have killed Paul. Now, therefore, you, along with the council, give notice to the tribune to bring him down to you, as though you were going to determine his case more exactly. And we are ready to kill him before he comes near.'" Okay, so if you have ever spent time fasting, which occasionally I like to fast because it reminds me of my dependence on God rather than just on food. But I'm not a person that I don't hardly ever eat breakfast. I don't, a lot of times it'll be 2 o'clock in the afternoon and I'll realize I haven't eaten or drank anything today. I'm not hungry most of the time. If I decide to fast, you know what I wake up feeling like? I just want food. Whatever it is, I would eat beef jerky in bed if it was right now. I just want anything. Imagine being so serious about wanting this guy to be gone that you say, "I will not eat anything until he's dead." I have never, ever in my life hated anyone to that extent. I can't even imagine having that feeling. But it's also interesting here that these are the people who are supposedly representing God. The religious, super people, right? These are the guys that are zealous. These are the people that are serious. And yet, what is it that they want more than anything? To glorify God, to make Him known. No, they want this guy to shut up. And they're willing to, by any means necessary, through deceit, to fulfill a vow to God to kill somebody. I just want you to consider what this is for a moment. It's not just a simple thing of they hate him and so they want him gone. These are the people that are, it'd be like if you found out that the higher ups at the Southern Baptist Convention, all the, district super, I don't know what they're called even, but they all got together and like, hey, that one pastor, we need him gone. He's been talking nonsense. And so what we're going to do is we're going to have a meeting and we're going to make sure that when you get him here, as soon as he walks through the door, hi, straight up Brutus, we're going to get him. Like that would be, what would you think? You would just immediately like, those people, they don't even know God. They have no idea who he is or what he's like. What we're seeing is over and over again that this religious leader sect, the people that are in this powerful position within the Jewish world at this time are much more of a political power than they are a religious power. They care much more about the political nature and the power that they have and they're standing over people than they do about upholding God's law or fulfilling what it is that he's called them to do. They're willing to pull on that lever of death, but they're willing to go further than that even, or added to it, I guess you'd say, through conspiracy, through deceit. They're willing to do whatever it takes to get rid of him. So in verse 16 it says, now the son of Paul's sister, Paul's nephew, heard of their ambush. So he went and entered the barracks and told Paul. Paul came, called one of the centurions and said, take this young man to the tribune, for he has something to tell him. So he took him and brought him to the tribune and Paul and said, Paul the prisoner called me to ask you to bring this young man to you, as he has something to say to you. The tribune took him by the hand and going aside asked him privately, what is it that you have to tell me? And he said, the Jews have agreed to ask you to bring Paul down to the council tomorrow, as though they were going to inquire somewhat more closely about him. But do not be persuaded by him, for more than 40 of their men are lying in ambush for him, who have bound themselves by an oath neither to eat or drink till they have killed him. And now they are ready, waiting for your consent. So the tribune dismissed the young man and charged him, tell no one that you were informed me of these things. So here's just something interesting to think about. Like I said, don't have a lot of experience with prison. But in the movies that I've watched where there's prison involved, if you tell the guard something, you know what they usually say? I don't care. Like that's you. Sounds like you're going to have a bad day. Think about God's providence in every situation, that even when Paul is in prison, even while he is in one of the worst things that we can imagine, that he not only, his nephew, finds out about this plot, is able to get to Paul, and Paul is able to call a centurion who's willing to listen and care enough about it to go and talk to the tribune, and then take the young man to the tribune who's able to relay the information to this tribune who is then sympathetic at least enough or cares enough about Roman citizenship one way or the other that he is willing to take care of Paul to make sure that this situation is resolved without Paul being killed by 40 people in the presence of the high priest. God's providence is all over this. It's this situation, remember, that Paul knows he's going to this place. He's got more places to be. And this is just playing out over and over again and showcasing like God is in control of every aspect. Even when it doesn't look like it's working the way that you want it to work, he's still in control. It says, when they called, moved. Okay, here we go. Verse 23 says, then he called two of the centurions and said, get ready 200 soldiers and 70 horsemen and 200 spearmen to go as far as Caesarea at the third hour of the night. Also provide mounts for Paul to ride and bring him safely to Felix, the governor. And he wrote a letter to this effect. So he not only cares enough about Paul or Roman citizenship to make sure that he's protected, but he gives basically this army to protect Paul as he goes on this journey and puts him on a horse. He doesn't have to walk. He's mounted with all of these soldiers. 200 what does he say? 200 soldiers, 70 horsemen, and 200 spearmen to go as far as Caesarea. That's a pretty big deal. I mean, these guys would have been ready to go. There is nobody that's going to get, you could bring your 40 men all you want. They're not even going to get close to Paul. So God is not only providing for him a way to go through it in this supernatural way where Paul could have walked to Caesarea without anybody being able to touch him, I believe. But he does it in such a way that it displays his power over even the Roman government. That he takes this government that is opposed to God and uses it to protect his messenger. That's a pretty wild situation. In all of this, he's taking Paul and allowing him to be put in front of people with more and more power, further up the rungs of the Roman government. He's putting him in place to be able to proclaim his message and talk about who God is and what he's doing in front of people that are more and more important. And he's doing so by giving him a, not just a bodyguard, but like a, right this moment, a kind of like a private army. In verse 26 it says, Claudius Lysias, to his excellency, the governor Felix, greetings. This man was seized by the Jews and was about to be killed by them. And we came upon the soldiers and rescued him. Having learned that he was a Roman citizen and desiring to know the charge for which they were accusing him, I brought him down to the council. I found that he was being accused about questions of their law, but charged with nothing deserving death or imprisonment. And when it was disclosed to me that there would be a plot against the man, I sent him to you at once, ordering his accusers also to state before you what they have against him. So the soldiers, according to their instruction, took Paul and brought him by night to Antipatris. And on the next day they returned to the barracks, letting the horsemen go on with him. When they had come to Caesarea and delivered the letter to the governor, they presented Paul as before him, or also before him. On reading the letter, he asked what province he was from, and where he learned that he was from Cilicia. He said, I will give you a hearing when your accusers arrive. And he commanded him to be guarded in Herod's praetorium. Every situation that you're seeing work out here is incredible, because in my mind, if it was just one of these people, one of these governors, one of these rulers, was like, I don't care. Imagine that. Have you ever run into a bureaucratic roadblock? I'm sure none of you have ever dealt with anybody that's in power and government that has just been like, I don't care about what's going on with you. I'm just going to continue on doing what I'm doing. I have, and I'm a peon. I think we've all kind of dealt with this hurdle that you get to somebody that is in the position that you need them to fix something, and they just don't care. They're not worried about it. They've got bigger fish to fry. Every person that Paul runs into on this hierarchy towards the top people in Rome, they all at least care enough to hear what he has to say, to put him in front of his accusers and hear what this is. Imagine that you have the option to go to court and hear what people are going to argue about, or to not and do whatever you wanted to do that day. Which would you choose? I don't want to go to court. I've never been called, me and Natalie or I, either one, have ever been called for jury duty one time in our entire life. Never even gotten a letter about it. I don't think that the judges know we exist or something. But if I had the option and they called me to go do it, I would probably say, I don't really want to do that. I don't want to go to court and hear people argue. Each one of these people cares enough to hear an argument made by people that they probably don't like a whole lot. This is a strange thing that's working out here. And it's building this tension that you're just waiting for this moment where Paul's going to stand in front of them and proclaim the truth, and everybody's going to fall on their knees and bow and worship God, and it's going to start a big revival within the Roman world and the Jewish church, and it's going to be amazing, right? That's what, as I'm reading, that's what I'm hoping for. So in Acts chapter 24, we're moving into the next chapter. He says, after 5 days, the high priest Ananias came down with some elders and the spokesman, one Tertullius. They laid before the governor their case against Paul. And when he had been summoned, Tertullius began to accuse him, saying, since Through you we enjoy much peace, and since by your foresight, most excellent Felix, reforms are being made for this nation, in every way and everywhere, we accept this with all gratitude. But to detain you no further, I beg in your kindness to hear us briefly. Never say with 50 words what you can say with 3, right? Glad to be here. Let's get started. This is to the extent that it, like, hey, let me butter you up so you can listen to what I'm going to say, right? We have found this man a plague, one who stirs up riots among all the Jews throughout the world and is a ringleader of the sect of the Nazarenes. He even tried to profane the temple, but we seized him. By examining him yourself, you will be able to find out from him about everything which we accuse him. So you have this they had 5 days, or they've had even more than 5 days, but they've had 5 days that they knew they were going to have this time to come and accuse him. Don't think that they were on their way walking and they did the me in high school with my oral report coming up and just said, you know what, I'm going to get up there and just say some stuff and it's going to be fine. Or I'm going to write my my essay the morning of, it'll be fine. It's fine, whatever. They had thought about this. They had taken counsel with one another. They had decided that this was the best way that they were going to be able to win this argument. This accusation that they were going to make was the best argument or the best accusation that they could come up with. And the best thing that they come up with is what? He stirs up trouble. I think you could say a lot of things about Paul, but there's one thing that you could say that is very true about him. It's that he stirred up trouble. He caused problems for the system that existed, very similar to what Jesus did. The system that existed was running just fine. They had everybody in order. They knew what they were doing. They knew where things were supposed to be when they were supposed to be there, and they knew that everybody else knew how to fall in line with that. And when Jesus came on the scene and started to preach publicly and openly, he caused problems. There were issues because what he was saying didn't go along with the established rules of the road. What everybody knew was all right. It caused a problem for the religious and political leaders. So this is the same exact accusation that they're making against Paul. And I love, you ever have somebody call you a name, but because of who called you that name, you're kind of like, that's awesome. You wear it like a badge of honor, right? If you call me that, then I must be an all right person because, woo. For them to call him a plague, like a disease, a constant, ongoing problem within their system, that's kind of a cool thing. But they knew that this accusation, that he's stirring up trouble, that within the Rome, the Pax Romana, the peace of Rome, that within that situation and system, that would be the worst thing that they could probably say about him, is that he doesn't go with the flow. He knows the rules. We know he knows the rules because he used to be following the rules. But now he doesn't follow the rules anymore. And he's encouraging other people to not follow the same rules that we want them to follow. And when that happens, order breaks down, chaos ensues, difficulties start. And so the case that they're making for Felix here is like, hey, he keeps going out like this, it's just going to get worse. He's just going to cause riots and trouble and problems. They fail to kind of throw in there that they seem to be the one that are starting the riots. They don't like what he's saying. He's not exactly saying you have to do this and picking up stones and throwing them at people or anything like that. He's saying words and they're responding with violence. It's kind of that situation where you deal with somebody and you say something and then they get mad or they punch you or whatever. You see these two people and there's words that are said and then there's fists that are thrown and then the person that is over here says, "Look what you made me do," right? Like, look what you made me do. Like, I didn't make you do anything. You chose to do that, right? This is the situation that you have with Paul. He's saying words. He is causing a problem. but they're responding with actual violence, with actual threats of murder, with the desire to lie. Imagine that Felix would have to know that these were the same people that were willing to just lie in order to ambush him. That they know that that's the kind of people that they're dealing with here. That these religious leaders that come in and their piety with their robes and their entourage and all that are just like all the other thugs out there that are looking for political power through violence. They know who they're dealing with, and we know who we're dealing with. It says the Jews also joined him in the charge, affirming that all these things are so. These Jews, when it says it that way, are the Jews of the different Asian countries that he's been going to, or parts of Asia. It's referring to the Jerusalem Jewish people, and then also the people that he's been going to all the cities of, that they don't like him either. In verse 10, he says, and when the governor had nodded to him to speak, sometimes you catch little funny things there. Isn't it weird that he said that specific phrase? He didn't say like, hey, it's your turn or anything. He just kind of nodded. And it's so weird that that's recorded in the Bible for us to read 2,000 years later, that in this accusation, that when Paul's time to speak came, that Felix just looked at him and kind of gave him all right, it's your turn. Like, that's weird. So he nods for him to speak. Paul replied, knowing that for many years you have been a judge over this nation, I cheerfully make my defense. You can verify that it is not more than 12 days since I went up to worship in Jerusalem, and they did not find me disputing with anyone or stirring up a crowd, either in the temple or in their synagogue or in the synagogue or in the city. Neither can they prove to you that what they now bring against me, but this I confess to you, that according to the way which they call a sect, I worship the God of our fathers, believing everything laid down by the law and written in the prophets, having a hope in God, which these men themselves accept, that there will be a resurrection of both the just and the unjust. Just for a moment there, understand that what Paul is saying here, he says, I was here to worship, and they didn't find me disputing or arguing with anybody. I wasn't there, pushing anybody around or saying, you got to believe what I'm saying, or you're stupid, or anything like that. He was asked some questions and he was making his case. And what he's essentially saying is it's like the third graders. This is the big people equivalent of the third grade thing, where it's like, I'm rubber, you're glue, whatever you say bounces off me and sticks to you. I don't think Paul was nodding his head like doing all that, but maybe, I don't know. But that's what he's saying. Like, I wasn't doing any of those things. This was you. I was just there to worship. I was talking. They even said like, hey, he was trying to defile the temple, right? Or the synagogue, or it was the temple. You know why they said that? Is because they had assumed that the people that were with him were Gentiles. They weren't. They thought that he was going to take these Gentiles into the temple, and they could not stand for that, right? Remember, they are still very serious about the separation between Jew and Gentile. And what is this big monkey wrench that's been thrown into the entire system is that Paul is saying no more. That Jesus has called everyone, that Peter, right? It's the net that's been laid down that, hey, rise and eat. It's all good. Everybody's in now. Go to the ends of the world. Not just for the Jews, but for the Gentiles. So what he's saying is, I didn't do anything that they're saying I did. Technically, they were the ones that started the riots. He says, so I always take pains to have a clear conscience toward both God and man. Now, after several years, I came to bring alms to my nation and to present offerings. While I was doing this, they found me purified in the temple without any crowd or tumult. But some Jews from Asia, they ought to be here before you to make an accusation, should they have anything against me, or else let these men themselves say what wrongdoing they found when I stood before the council. Other than this one thing that I cried out while standing among them, it is with respect to the resurrection of the dead that I'm on trial before this day. So Paul is making a defense against him, of himself, He doesn't make any accusations necessarily. He's just defending himself and his actions. He takes this moment, though, and you see him making this defense, and then all of a sudden he goes directly to the resurrection. He said, here is the heart of the matter. I believe, just like some of these guys believe, that there is a resurrection from the dead. Paul simply believes that Jesus is the first fruits of that resurrection. That the resurrection that we will experience, that Jesus was the forerunner of that he demonstrated what that looks like. You see, the hope that we have, the everything that we have, is that there is a resurrection, that this life filled with chaos and difficulty and pain is not it. That there's something that comes after this, that there's something that's more and bigger and greater, that there's something that this life, even you could say, is like a curtain that is pulled over the reality that is there waiting on us. And so what Paul is saying is, hey, this thing, the resurrection, it's really important. This is the heart of the matter. This is what we need to talk about. This is where I'm going. So this is the ultimate linchpin of our hope. And it's why we can live this life with a degree of abandon, become believing that there is a life to come. You have the ability to, instead of counting every moment of every day and holding it hostage and trying to squeeze as much out of everything that you get because this is all you got, you have this ability to say, you know what? Everything that I do here, I want to use my time well and wisely. I want to surrender it over to God because this isn't it. There's more. There's bigger. There's next. That's a really different way to live your life. If you live your life with the only hope that you have is that you get to accomplish and experience everything that you could ever want to accomplish and experience within the 20, 40, 60, 80, 100 years that you have here, that's difficult. That hurts. Because you know that there are things that you're going to neglect. You know that there are things you're going to lose. If this is all you got, I don't like to rhyme all the time, but sometimes I do it on accident. This is all you got, it's not a lot. And you just put that on a t-shirt. Verse 22 says, but Felix, having a rather accurate knowledge of the way, put them off, saying, when Lysias, the tribune, comes down, I will decide your case. So he's been given 5 days, or they've been given 5 days to make this accusation. And now he says, hey, there's some more people that need to come in and they can make their accusation, or what they'll kind of tell what happened. Then I'll decide your case. It says, then he gave orders to the centurion that he should be kept in custody, but to have some liberty, and that none of his friends should be prevented from attending to his needs. After some days, Felix came with his wife Drusilla, who was Jewish, and he sent for Paul and heard him speak about faith in Christ Jesus. And he reasoned about righteousness and self-control and the coming judgment. Felix was alarmed and said, go away for the present. When I get an opportunity, I will summon you. This is one of those moments where you're seeing, man, Paul has been just kind of passed up to higher and higher people. Now he's this governor, like, right. And he's being summoned to come and talk. This man is coming with his wife, and they want to talk about everything. He's even familiar with the way, which is what they would say is like Christianity, the church. And now Paul's getting like a one-on-one. And it says when he starts talking about righteousness, what does Felix do? He's alarmed. And what is his response? Go away. Leave me. I don't want to talk about this anymore. This isn't someone that doesn't understand what's being talked about. This isn't someone that's stupid. This is someone that realizes the truth. That if you accept that Jesus is your master, is a king, that there are implications about your life. I think I've shared before reading a book, and I remember, I don't know what happened. I remember getting to the middle point of this book, and I closed it real fast. I just put it away, and now they said, "Well, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, I said if I don't read any more of that book, then I technically didn't finish the book, and I don't know the information that's in the book. Therefore, I don't have to change anything that I'm doing." Right? You ever have a situation like that? Somebody comes and tells you about something, about somebody that you know is going to cause you to have to confront that person, and you have the opportunity at that point to then take that information and use it to confront and to make something hopefully better, or you have the ability to ignore it and pretend that you don't know that information. Or you can just tell the person, hey, I don't even want to hear what you're having to say because I don't want to have to deal with it, right? He understands what this means. And it even seems like to understand that and to go forward with it in such a way that it causes you to want to be separated from that person and not hear it anymore, you would understand that there's a power to it. Oftentimes when you're dealing with things, when you're talking to people, you think that they're going to ask you all these questions that you don't know the answer to. You think that everything hinges on, creation or scientific facts about different things or whatever. And the truth of the matter is that this is a decision that's made based in the heart, not in the brain so much, not in scientific facts and being able to prove everything. It's that you understand the truth of something and you realize, like, that would change who I am. That would make a difference about what I have to do on the day-to-day. That's why Jesus says, like, hey, before you commit to something, before you go build a tower, what are you going to do? You're going to count the cost. See if you got enough money to finish it. Because if you start building a tower and you get halfway through and then you run out of money and you can't finish it, what are people going to do? They're going to laugh at you. There's a gigantic, it's not a skyscraper, it's kind of a skyscraper. It's a big, tall building down on the I-4 near Orlando that there was a Christian broadcasting company that started building this, and they wanted to build it just as they got money. They were going to build it, and some of the money went to that building, and some of the money went to other things. But it's been sitting there about half complete for years, like 20 years plus. It's just sitting there. It's an eyesore. And as you look at that, if you say, hey, we're going to faithfully trust God to allow us to build this thing, and He's going to fulfill it, and He's going to... If that's the foundation that you're standing on, and then everybody's looking at it and going, that tower is not finished. Y'all are stupid. Your faith was misplaced. When you decide that you're going to follow, you better count the cost. When you get ready to go into battle, and you've got 10,000 and they've got 15, you better figure out if your 10 are better than their 15 before you get started, right? If you're going to follow Christ, you better be serious about it, because He will not accept half measures. I used to tell teenagers, I'm like, look, if you want to do all the stuff in this world, then just go do it. But don't call yourself a Christian while you're doing it. Don't do a half measure. Don't be 1 foot in. You're either in or you're out. I feel like that's what Felix understood this moment, is like, hey, I don't want to talk about this anymore, because if we talk about this anymore, I'm going to be accountable for it. And right now, I can just tell you to go away. The power dynamic was there. But here's what I wanted to see, is that all this tension is building up, that Paul is talking to him, and they're in the private little situation, and that Felix is like, I believe, and I'm in, and I trust, and let's go. This is awesome. And that's not what you see, is it? You see kind of the opposite of that. See, as you go through this narrative, you hear where Paul is going, what he's doing, you oftentimes see that the reality is not what you would desire or design. Life is the way that it is. There are going to be many people that you talk to about Jesus that will say, that sounds nice, and I like what you have to say, and we're buds, and that's cool, and I'm glad that means something for you, but for me, I don't want it. I hate that. There are going to be people that you pray over and pray for and desire earnestly, and you do everything in your power to see them come to Christ. And they're just not. There are going to be situations that you pray for to work out in a way that you wanted to work out in. There are going to be all kinds of things that you desire to see work out in this way. And they don't go the way that you want them to. That's the reality of this life. It's difficult. You don't always get the payoff that you expect. There's a form of Christianity out there that exists where they basically say that if you don't sin and you just follow God and you love Him enough and you're faithful enough, that everything that you want will just happen, right? And it's false. You can be the most faithful, trusting, just love blasting out of your heart and your life into everyone that you see and talk to. And you can lose your child or your spouse. You can lose your house. The country that you live in can erupt into chaos and war. You can be gunned down by a machine gun for no reason. So the outcomes are not always what we desire. But even in the midst of outcomes that we don't like, God is still good. Even when Felix says, no, I don't want to hear about it, Paul doesn't just, well, never mind. I guess this is all stupid and I'll just go home now. Forget it. He continues on. He trusts God. He follows Him. He submits even when it's painful and the outcomes are not ideal. This last verse here says in verse 26, he says, at the same time, excuse me, he hoped that money would be given him by Paul, so he sent for him often and conversed with him. So, see, Felix was really into the money thing. He was thinking, if I keep talking to Paul, one day he's going to have some cash on hand and maybe he'll slide a little bit my way. It's a weird situation to be in, right? It's like a mob boss. Verse 27, it says, when 2 years had elapsed, Felix was succeeded by, I wanted to say this right because it's weird. It's a funny name. Because it looks like it'd be Porcius, but it's way different. And I'll figure it out and say it in a minute. It says, when 2 years had elapsed, Felix was succeeded, and desiring to do the Jews a favor, Felix left Paul in prison. You see what I mean? There's this thing that you do whenever you preach and you proclaim the gospel, and you want to kind of start here and move in this direction, and then you want to land the plane in this place where it's like, yeah, let's go. This is awesome. Make a decision. It's all amazing. You can't do that with this, can you? It doesn't end in a place that's positive and awesome. It ends in a place of difficulty, of just an unhappy moment, a letdown, I guess you could say. It feels like when you watch a movie and you feel the tension building and building and building, then if you're like me and you grew up watching some of the kind of campy, scary movies, the music gets louder and you just know something's about to happen, and then boom, somebody jumps out from behind the wall and you throw your popcorn or whatever. There's that moment of release after the tension builds up. Well, as this tension is building up, the release is just not there. Paul spends 2 years in prison. I mean, he's at liberty. He's got his friends around and all that, but he's a captive. He spends 2 years sharing the gospel with this guy who only cares about trying to get a bribe from him. Some of us can relate to that in a pretty serious situation, pretty close to reality. Paul gets left in prison as a favor, not even because he's done something wrong. You see that as well. Like Felix doesn't even think that he's guilty. He just does it as a political favor to the Jews. That's a bummer. the outcomes here are not what we want to see. The outcomes here are undesirable. But in the midst of that, God is still good. God is still working. There's providence on display all through this. And then we're going to see it continue on as we finish the book of Acts. But in our own lives, as we think about these things, as we consider it, I want us to think about it in that way. I'm trying more and more to think about it in this way. Because I had in mind this idea that I would exchange my right behavior, my faithfulness, my good works, whatever, for God's favor, right? That I would do the good thing and that He would, reward me for that. I cannot tell you how many people I've counseled over the years that said, either they were at the beginning of a divorce, or they were their wife left them, or their husband, or there was just a bad situation going on here or there, or whatever. And they said, I'm going to pray about this. And in that moment, they're reading their Bible every day, and they're just faithful. They're in. And then they don't get the outcome that they want. And you know what happens? They're done. They're out. They don't care anymore. It's very easy to try to use God and to leverage your behavior to get Him to do what you want Him to do. But that is not the relationship that we have with Him. You do not barter your good, right behavior, your faith, your anything for God's favor. You already have His favor. He loves you. He loves you in such a way that I don't think any of us can really even fathom. He sent His only Son to die in your place, to take the punishment and the penalty that you deserve, and to exchange it with the righteousness of Christ. You already have His favor. Don't try to get something or get God to do something by you making something happen. Trust Him. That doesn't mean you don't ask. We ask, and we knock on the door, and we knock on the door, and we knock on the door, and we're persistent about what it is that we want God to do. But when He doesn't do that, we still trust Him. We still follow Him. And a year later, or 10 years later, or 50 years later, when we see what God was doing in that moment, that what we were asking for would have ruined or been the worst thing, we see the hand of God and His providence over all things. The more times we can do that in our lives, where we can look back and see what God was doing, the more we can trust Him, the more we can follow Him. God is not asking us to exchange everything that we do in each day to try to get Him to like us more. He likes you a lot. He loves you. He is for you. That doesn't mean everything in your life is going to go the way that you want it to, though. Sometimes your life is going to be, can I just say crap? Is that okay? Sometimes your life's just going to be crap. And it's not because you're unfaithful or you did something wrong. It's not because God is mad at you. If we follow that line of thought or that theology, we would have to say that Paul, all throughout his entire life, must have been a really bad person. Must have been the most unfaithful, unkind, ungenerous, just doing it all wrong, because God was constantly putting him through difficulties. We're not even all the way there, but it's already pretty bad. I don't know about any of you. I've never in my life been beaten with a whip over my relationship with Christ. Not even one time. We need to understand how this works, because we have to change it in our mind and understand that we are His and that He loves us, and that nothing that we do is going to change that. Now, when we sin and we fail and we fall short, we do distance ourselves from our communion with Him, but that relationship is never severed. It's never gone. We're still His. We don't do these things, we don't try to follow, and we don't live a faithful life to try to get him to like us or give us favor or whatever. We do it because we are loved and we're his. So in your life, as you go forward, let's all try to be more like Paul in the good ways. Sometimes maybe we don't want to be so much like Paul in different ways that he's doing things. I don't know. It's probably all good. But in these certain ways where you can look and see the faithfulness that he's displaying over and over again in the midst of persecution and chaos and difficulty, in the midst of the worst problem that we all have, which is disappointment. I can deal with somebody being mad at me. I can deal with problems and pain and all of that. But disappointment, it's a killer. When you build something up so much to try to get to it and then it just fizzles. It's a gut punch. And to trust God in the midst of that. And to know that he's big enough to hear you say, where are you? What are you doing? Why have you left me this way? He's okay with that. But when you're done whining, to go back and follow him, to call him good and faithful, to trust him with the next day, the next moment, with the next everything. That's that progressive path of sanctification. That's knowing him and loving him and trusting him. And that's what he desires from us. Is not just get it all right and do all the right stuff and have the right theology and know the right words and all that stuff. That's all good. But that's fruit. What he actually wants from us is our trust. That we know where our help comes from. That we know that we can rely on him. That we know he's for us. What does it look like tomorrow? As you go in your week, what does it look like tomorrow to really believe that God loves you, to trust him with tomorrow, to trust him with finances and jobs and family and witnessing, to trust him that as you proclaim the gospel to people, that it won't return void. What does that look like? Let's pray.